Hana's breath made small clouds in the freezing air as she stood at the big window looking out into space. The station was falling apart around them. Pipes leaked strange green liquid onto the metal floors. The lights kept going on and off. Everything smelled like burning circuits and old air that had been recycled too many times. She could see their home planet below. Zephyr Prime used to be the most beautiful world in the galaxy. Cities made of living crystal grew like flowers across continents, covered in silver grass. Rivers flowed uphill, carrying healing waters that could fix any wound or sickness. The trees sang in the wind, their leaves changing colors based on the emotions of people nearby. Now it was all brown and dead. The Devourers had been draining the life from it for 3 months. What used to be shining cities were now just empty husks. The singing trees were silent stumps. Even the oceans had turned black. Hana remembered when she was little, maybe 7 years old, running through those crystal cities with her sister Yuna. They would play games where they tried to make the trees laugh by thinking happy thoughts. The leaves would turn bright yellow and orange when they succeeded. Her mother would heal injured birds with just her touch, and her father could make flowers bloom instantly by humming old songs. That was before the Devourers came. Before they learned that their greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. The Zephyrians had always been healers. For 10,000 years, other species came to them when wars broke out or diseases spread. They never asked for payment. They never chose sides. They just healed whoever needed help. Their technology could fix broken bones in minutes, cure cancers with a gentle touch, and even bring back plants from near death. But they had never learned how to fight. When the Devourers first appeared at the edge of their system, the Zephyrian Council tried to help them. They thought these strange biomechanical creatures were just another species that needed healing. They sent their best doctors and their most advanced medical equipment. The Devourers consumed everything: the doctors, the equipment, even the rescue ships. Then they came for more. One by one, the great crystal cities fell. The Zephyrians tried to evacuate, but where could they go? Every world they fled to was eventually found and consumed. The Devourers seemed to follow their healing energy like sharks following blood in water. Hana touched the communication device on her wrist. 12 signals showed up on the small screen. 12 heartbeats. That was all that remained of billions of her people. Elder Minho shuffled over to her. He was the oldest of them at 300 years, which was still young for a Zephyrian. His blue skin, which should have been bright and glowing with health, was pale and flickering like a dying light bulb. His long silver hair hung loose around his shoulders, instead of floating gently like it used to when he was healthy. "Hana," he said softly, "the others are scared. They want to use the last evacuation pods. Maybe we can find somewhere the Devourers haven't been yet." Hana laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Where, Minho? We've run for 2 years. Every world we've touched, they've found. Every species that tried to help us got consumed too. We're like a disease now. Anyone who gets near, us dies." She pointed out the window at the massive dark shapes moving between the stars. The Devourer fleet looked like a swarm of metal insects, each ship the size of a city. They moved wrong, not like normal spaceships, but like living things that happened to be made of metal and circuits. Some of them used to be other species' ships before they got absorbed and changed. "Remember the Kelvani?" Hana asked. "They had the strongest military in this sector, thousands of warships. The Devourers turned them all into more Devourers in less than a week." Minho nodded sadly. The Kelvani had been their friends, cat-like creatures with golden fur who loved to build beautiful things. Their cities were works of art that took centuries to complete. Now those same cities were growing tumors of metal and wire, producing more Devourer ships. "What about the singing crystals of Melodia?" Minho asked. "They were pure energy, no physical form at all." "Gone," Hana said. "The Devourers found a way to eat energy too. Everything they touch becomes part of them. Everything except us, and only because we keep running." She walked over to the control panel and started pressing buttons. "I'm tired of running, Minho. I'm tired of watching our friends die to buy us a few more days. If the Devourers want the last of the Zephyrians, they can come and take us. But we die here, on our own world, as ourselves." The evacuation pods powered down with a sad whining sound. Minho's skin flickered brighter for a moment. You know what? You're right. At least our ancestors will know we didn't die as cowards hiding in some cave on a distant world. That's when the alarms started going off. Not the harsh red alarms that meant the Devourers were attacking, but the soft blue ones that meant someone was trying to communicate. Hana ran to the communication station. The screen showed 5 small ships approaching their system. They were strange-looking, not like any design she'd seen before. Metal and angular where most ships were curved. They looked almost primitive compared to the organic flowing shapes most species preferred, but they were broadcasting in Zephyrian. Broken. Mispronounced Zephyrian, but definitely their language. This is Captain Jiwon of Earth Ship Endurance. We come in peace. Are you the Zephyrians? We've been looking for you. Hana's hands shook as she activated the reply system. Earth? She'd never heard of any species called Earth. The database search came up empty. This is Commander Hana of the last Zephyrian station. Who are you? Why are you here? The Devourers will consume you if you stay. The voice that came back sounded young and determined. We know about the Devourers. They ate 3 of our colonies before we figured out how to track them. We found references to your people in some old alien databases. Thought maybe we could help each other out. Help? Hana almost laughed again. These unknown aliens with their tiny primitive ships thought they could help against the force that had consumed half the galaxy. But something in the voice made her pause. There was no fear in it, just calm determination, like someone who had made up their mind about something important and wasn't going to change it no matter what. You should leave, she said finally. We're already dead. Don't let us drag you down with us. That's not how we do things, came the reply. Nobody fights alone, not on our watch. Captain Jiwon stood in the middle of his ship's bridge, looking at the blue hologram floating in front of him. The Zephyrian woman had the strangest eyes he'd ever seen. They were huge and silver, like mirrors that reflected starlight. Her skin was pale blue and seemed to glow softly from the inside like she had swallowed moonlight. Behind him, his crew of 30 humans worked quietly at their stations. These weren't soldiers or heroes. They were just regular people who had volunteered when Earth put together this crazy mission. Minji was a mechanic from Seoul who had lost her brother when the Devourers hit New Busan colony. Taiho used to fix computers in a small town before his whole family got evacuated from New Seoul. Sunho was barely 20 years old, fresh out of engineering school when the call went out for volunteers. They all had one thing in common, though. They had all lost someone to the Devourers, and they all refused to just sit back and let it happen to others. Jiwon had been a cargo ship captain before this whole mess started. He used to haul mining equipment between Earth's colonies, living very quiet life moving from planet to planet. Nothing exciting, nothing dangerous, just honest work that paid the bills and let him see the stars. Then the Devourers hit Harmony Station. Jiwon had been scheduled to deliver new air recyclers to the station that week. He was running late because of engine trouble, cursing his bad luck as he limped toward the station at half speed. When he finally arrived, there was nothing left but twisted metal and silence. 3,000 people. Gone in less than 6 hours. Among them was his sister Hyerin and her 2 kids. They had moved to Harmony Station because it was supposed to be safe, a peaceful research colony where scientists studied alien plants and her kids could grow up seeing the wonders of the galaxy. Jiwon had floated in space for 3 days, staring at the wreckage before the rescue ships found him. That's when he volunteered for this mission. Not because he was brave or special, but because he couldn't live with himself if he just went back to hauling cargo while these things were still out there eating people. You humans are strange, Hana said, tilting her head as she studied his face through the hologram. Your ships are so small and crude. Your weapons are primitive. You don't even have basic life extension technology. Most species your age are still figuring out how to leave their home system. Jiwon shrugged. Yeah, we're not the smartest or strongest species out there. Hell, we just figured out faster than light travel about 50 years ago. Most of our ships are held together with spare parts and hope. He gestured around his bridge. The walls were covered in patches where they'd fixed hull breaches. Half the control panels had been rewired with cables that didn't match. The ship smelled like recycled air and instant coffee. But we're stubborn, he continued. Really, really stubborn. When someone tells us something is impossible, We tend to take that as a challenge. Elder Minho stepped closer to the communication device on the Zephyrian station. Young human, you don't understand what you're facing. The Devourers have consumed entire galactic civilizations, species with technology thousands of years ahead. Of yours. The Kelvani had weapons that could crack planets in half. The Melodians were pure energy beings who could manipulate matter with their thoughts. None of it mattered. Jiwon nodded seriously. We know. We've been tracking them for months, studying their patterns. We've seen what's left of the worlds they've hit. We know we can't beat them in a straight fight. Then why are you here? Hana asked, her voice almost pleading. Why throw your lives away? You could run. Find somewhere far from here and hide. Live long, happy lives while the rest of us burn. Because that's not living, said Minji from her engineering station. She was a small woman with calloused hands and grease permanently under her fingernails. My brother used to say that a life spent hiding isn't worth living. He died trying to evacuate civilians from New Busan. Could have saved himself, but he went back for strangers. Taeho looked up from his computer terminal. My grandmother survived the Third World War back on Earth. She used to tell me stories about the underground shelters, how people would share their last piece of bread with neighbors they barely knew. She said that's what made us human. Not our technology or our strength, but the fact that we can't stand to watch others suffer alone. We've got this saying back home, Jiwon added. When the monsters come for your neighbors, you don't ask if you can win. You ask how long you can hold the line. Hana was quiet for a long moment. Around her, the other surviving Zephyrians had gathered to listen to this strange conversation. They whispered among themselves in their musical language, confusion clear. In their voices, "You really mean to stay and fight beside us?" she asked finally. "Even though we can't offer you anything in return, our healing technology won't work on your species. Our ships are too damaged to be of use. We have no weapons, no military knowledge. We're more liability than asset." "That's not how friendship works," Sunho said from his navigation station. He was the youngest member of the crew, barely old enough to be off Earth on his own. You don't help people because of what they can do for you. You help them because it's the right thing to do. Jiwon smiled at the kid. Sunho reminded him of his nephew, full of idealism and hope despite everything they'd seen. "Besides," Jiwon continued, "maybe we can't use your healing technology, but we've been wondering about something. Our databases mention that Zephyrian medicine works by reversing damage at the cellular level. What if that same process could work on the biomechanical corruption the Devourers use?" Hana's eyes went wide. "You think we could heal them? Turn them back into what they were before?" "It's a long shot," admitted Taeho, "but we've analyzed some Devourer wreckage. Under all that metal and circuitry, there are still traces of the original organic material. If your technology could strip away the corruption, we could save them instead of destroying them," Minho whispered. "Turn enemies back into allies." For the first time in months, Hana's skin began to glow a little brighter. "Even if that worked," she said, "the main fleet will be here in days. Thousands of ships. How could 30 humans and 12 Zephyrians possibly stand against that?" Jiwon grinned, and there was something wild and determined in his expression. "Well, we're about to find out." Seok wiped sweat from his forehead as he crawled through the narrow maintenance tunnel, dragging a heavy plasma cannon behind him. The metal was hot enough to burn through his work gloves, but they didn't have time to let it cool down. According to their sensors, the Devourer fleet would drop out of hyperspace in less than 6 hours. He emerged into what used to be the station's garden bay. Before the evacuation, this place had been filled with Zephyrian healing plants that glowed like soft lanterns. Now it was just empty space where they were trying to mount human weapons onto alien technology that seemed to be made of living crystal. Nari was waiting for him, her delicate hands dancing over a control panel that looked more like a musical instrument than a computer. Where human technology was all straight lines and sharp corners, Zephyrian tech curved and flowed like it had grown naturally. The circuits weren't made of metal wire, but some kind of organic material that pulsed with soft blue light, like veins carrying luminescent blood. "I still don't understand how your weapons work," Nari said, her musical voice tinged with confusion. "They're designed only to destroy, to burn and tear and break things apart. Where's the elegance in that?" Seok connected the plasma cannons power coupling to the Zephyrian energy grid, and immediately regretted it. Sparks flew everywhere as the two technologies tried to interface. The human system was crude and direct. Just push energy through a magnetic field and shoot superheated plasma at whatever you wanted gone. The Zephyrian system kept trying to harmonize with it, to find some way to make the destructive energy into something that could heal instead of harm. "Yeah, our stuff isn't pretty," Seok admitted, pulling out his toolkit to jury-rig an adapter. "But it gets the job done. Sometimes you need something that can punch a hole through 3 feet of armor plating." He had been an engineer on a mining station before volunteering for this mission. Nothing fancy, just keeping the rock crushers and ore processors running. But growing up on Earth, he'd learned to fix things with whatever was available. Duct tape, spare wire, and stubborn determination could solve most problems if you were creative enough. Nari watched him work with fascination. "Your technology is so violent. Even your tools are designed to force things to work, rather than convince them." Seok laughed as he hammered a connector into place with the back of his wrench. "Convince them? Lady, I'm trying to mount a weapon that shoots liquid. Fire onto a computer made of singing crystals. I don't think polite conversation is going to cut it." But as he worked, something strange started happening. The Zephyrian circuits began adapting to the human technology, finding ways to make the crude plasma system more efficient. Instead of just shooting raw energy, the cannon started producing more focused beams that used less power. The targeting system, which had been basic point and shoot, suddenly became incredibly precise. "It's learning," Nari breathed, her silver eyes wide with amazement. "The biotech is studying your weapon and making it better." "That's impossible," Seok said, but even as he spoke, he could see the readouts improving. The cannon's power output had increased by 30%, and its heat buildup had dropped to almost nothing. Across the bay, other human crew members were having similar experiences. Minji's missile launchers were somehow producing projectiles that could change course mid-flight to avoid hitting friendly targets. Taeho's communication array was picking up signals they'd never been able to detect before. Every piece of human technology that connected to the Zephyrian systems became more than the sum of its parts. "This is incredible," Seok muttered, running diagnostic tests on the hybrid weapon. "It's like your tech is teaching our tech how to be better." Nari smiled sadly. "That's what we do. We heal things, we make them whole. Even your weapons, apparently." But then her expression changed as she looked at the data flowing across her organic display screens. "Seok, look at this. When our biotech interfaces with your systems, it's not just improving them, it's translating them." She pointed to a readout that showed energy patterns Seok didn't recognize. "Your plasma cannon creates a specific type of energy disruption. Our healing arrays create the exact opposite pattern. If we combined them, we could cancel each other out," Seok said, confused. "That doesn't sound helpful." "No, you don't." "Understand." Nari's excitement was growing. "Watch this simulation." She activated a holographic display that showed a model of devourer biomechanical tissue. The corrupted flesh was a nightmare mixture of organic cells and metallic circuitry, all twisted together into something that shouldn't be able to exist. When a devourer converts someone, they inject nanobots that rewrite the victim's DNA and integrate mechanical components into their cellular structure. It's irreversible because the process creates quantum entanglement between the organic and artificial elements. Seok nodded. They'd studied captured devourer tissue samples and come to the same conclusion. Once someone was converted, there was no going back. "But," Nari continued manipulating the hologram, "if we hit the corrupted tissue with your plasma energy at the exact same time we hit it with our healing energy, the two forces don't cancel out. They create a resonance cascade that breaks the quantum entanglement." The hologram showed the twisted devourer tissue suddenly separating back into normal organic cells and inert metal components. The corruption simply disappeared. "We can heal them," Nari whispered. "We can actually heal them back to what they were before." Seok stared at the display, his mind racing. "How many people do you think are trapped inside those devourer ships?" "Millions, billions, all of them," said a new voice. Commander Hana had entered the bay, followed by Captain Jiwon and several other humans. Every person the Devourers have consumed is still in there somewhere, trapped in a biomechanical prison. G1 studied the holographic display with the intense focus of someone trying to solve an impossible puzzle. So we don't have to destroy the Devourer fleet, we have to heal it. The power requirements would be enormous, Seok warned, and we'd have to get close enough to each ship to establish a connection. The plasma weapons have limited range and, from what I've seen, Zephyrian healing tech requires direct contact or very close proximity. Plus, added Minji from where she was working on another hybrid weapon system, we'd be completely vulnerable while we're trying to heal them. No shields, no maneuvering, just sitting there hoping they don't blow us apart before the process completes. Hana's skin flickered with nervous energy. And if we're wrong about this, if the resonance cascade doesn't work, or if there are too many variables we haven't accounted for, then we die trying to save our enemies instead of dying fighting them, G1 said simply. Honestly, that sounds like a pretty human way to go. Taiho looked up from his computer terminal, where he'd been running calculations. Captain, I'm reading. Massive hyperspace distortions. The Devourer fleet is starting to arrive. Through the bay's transparent aluminum windows, they could see dark shapes materializing in the space around Zephyr Prime, hundreds of them, then thousands. Each ship was a grotesque fusion of organic curves and mechanical angles, like someone had tried to build a warship out of infected flesh and scrap metal. Well, Seok said, sealing the last connection on the hybrid weapon system, I guess we're about to find out if impossible harmony actually works. The station shuddered as the first Devourer scouts began their attack runs. The first thing Kyung noticed when the Devourer fleet arrived was the smell. Even through his fighters' sealed life support system, he could somehow sense the wrongness of those ships. They moved like living things, but felt dead at the same time, like corpses that had forgotten they were supposed to stop moving. He gripped his flight stick tighter and tried not to think about his little sister back on Earth. Sumi was only 12, still collecting pictures of different alien species and dreaming about becoming a xenobiologist. She'd never believe her lazy older brother was out here about to fight monsters from her worst nightmares. All fighters, this is Captain G1, came the voice through his headset. Remember, we're not trying to destroy them. We're trying to save them. Stay close to the healing ships and trust the tech. Trust the tech. Easier said than done when the tech was a crazy mixture of human weapons and alien healing systems that shouldn't work together, but somehow did. Kyung's fighter had been completely rebuilt in the past 6 hours. Where it used to have simple metal armor, now there were organic plates that could repair themselves. His missile launcher was connected to something that looked like a flower, made of crystal, and his targeting computer had been replaced with what the Zephyrians called a harmony interface. He didn't understand any of it, but the pre-flight tests had been incredible. When they shot practice rounds at old debris, the EE hybrid weapons didn't just destroy targets, they somehow converted the wreckage back into useful materials. Contact in 30 seconds, announced Minsu from the lead fighter. Holy Mother of... there are so many of them. Kyung could see them now through his cockpit window. The Devourer fleet stretched across space like a cancer, thousands of ships, in formations that hurt to look at. Some were clearly built from the remains of other species' vessels. He could see the elegant curves of what used to be Zephyrian crystal ships, now twisted into spiky monstrosities. Others looked like they had grown rather than been built, all organic surfaces and pulsing veins of corrupted energy. The biggest ones were the size of cities, covered in weapon ports that glowed with sick yellow light. The smallest were about the size of his fighter, but they moved in perfect coordination like a school of metal fish. This is insane, muttered Jinwoo over the comm. 5 human fighters and 12 Zephyrians against half the galaxy. We should have stayed home. Too late for that now, Kyung replied, checking his weapons one more time. The hybrid systems showed green across the board, whatever that meant when half the readouts were in Zephyrian symbols that looked like musical notes. The first wave of Devourer scouts came at them fast, small fighters that screamed through space, leaving trails of corrupted energy. Kyung dove to meet them, his finger hesitating over the trigger for just a moment. These used to be people. Maybe they still were, somewhere deep inside all that twisted metal and flesh. Then one of them fired at him, and instinct took over. His hybrid weapons lit up the darkness. But instead of the familiar orange plasma beams he was used to, they shot streams of blue-white energy that seemed to sing as they flew. When they hit the first Devourer fighter, something amazing happened. The corrupted ship didn't explode. Instead, it seemed to melt and reform, the twisted metal flowing like liquid, until suddenly it was a sleek, normal-looking fighter again. For a moment it just floated there, and then a voice came over the open comm channel. Where am I? What happened? I remember the pain, and then darkness, and then... The voice broke into sobs. Oh God, what did I do? What did they make me do? You're free now, Kyung said gently, even as he spun to engage another corrupted fighter. Welcome back to the living. All around him, the strangest battle in galactic history was unfolding. Human fighters would strafe Devourer ships with their hybrid weapons, while Zephyrian healing vessels followed behind, projecting waves of restoration energy that completed the process. Every hit didn't create an explosion, but a transformation. Kyung. Watch your six, shouted Minsu. Kyung rolled hard to the left just as a massive energy blast seared past his cockpit. One of the big Devourer cruisers had noticed what they were doing and was trying to stop them. Its weapons were the old-fashioned kind, designed to kill, not heal. The blast clipped his right wing, and Kyung felt his heart stop as he watched. Armor plating get torn away. But then the Zephyrian healing systems kicked in, and he watched in amazement as his wing regrew itself like a living thing. In less than 30 seconds, his fighter was completely whole again. This is impossible. He shouted into his comm, diving through a storm of enemy fire that should have killed him 10 times over. Impossible is what we do, Captain Jiwon replied calmly. From his position near the command ship, Jiwon watched the tactical display with growing amazement. What should have been a massacre was turning into something unprecedented. Every Devourer ship they killed became an ally. The freed crews, remembering who they used to be, immediately turned their weapons on their former captors. The tide was turning, but slowly. For every ship they freed, 10 more were moving to stop them. The big Devourer command vessels had figured out what was happening and were coordinating their attacks to prevent the humans and Zephyrians from getting close enough to use their healing weapons. Captain, called Taiho from the sensor station, I'm reading massive energy buildup from the largest Devourer ship. They're charging some kind of super weapon. Jiwon looked at the display and felt his blood run cold. The weapon signature was unlike anything in their databases, but the power levels were off the charts. If it fired, it would probably take out half their fleet in one shot. All ships, we need to take down that command vessel now, he ordered. Kyung, Minsu, Jinwoo, I need you to clear us a path. We're going in. Roger that, Captain, came Kyung's voice, slightly breathless from his impossible aerial dance through enemy fire. But that thing is heavily shielded. Our healing weapons might not be able to penetrate. Then we get creative, Jiwon said grimly. Seok, what's the maximum power we can push through the hybrid systems? Theoretically, a lot more than they're rated for. But Captain, if we overload them, we either save everyone or we all die trying. I can live with those odds. Kyung watched his captain's ship accelerate toward the massive Devourer command vessel, its hybrid weapons charging to dangerous levels. Around him, his fellow pilots formed up in a protective formation, their own fighters glowing with barely contained energy. This was it. The moment that would decide not just their fate, but the fate of everyone trapped inside those corrupted ships. For everyone we couldn't save before, Kyung whispered, and dove into the heart of the enemy formation. The dance of war and peace reached its crescendo. Hana pressed her hand against the warm metal of the observation deck railing and smiled. It still amazed her that she could do that. Smile without effort, feel hope without forcing it. 6 months ago, she had been preparing to die with the last remnants of her people. Now she was watching construction crews from 12 different species work together to rebuild her homeworld. The new Zephyr Prime station was nothing like the old one. Where the original had been purely Zephyrian crystal and organic technology, this one was a beautiful mixture of styles and materials. Human steel frameworks supported living Zephyrian walls that glowed softly in the darkness. Kelvani artistic panels displayed constantly changing patterns that responded to the emotions of people nearby. Even the singing crystals of Melodia had contributed, their energy forms weaving through the station's power grid like musical light, Still can't believe we pulled it off, said Admiral Jiwon, leaning against the railing beside her. He looked older now, with streaks of grey in his black, hair that hadn't been there before the battle. The weight of command during those impossible hours had aged him, but there was a contentment in his eyes that hadn't been there when they first met. Below them, a construction crew of humans and former devourers worked together to install new docking bays. It was still strange to see species that had been trying to kill each other 6 months ago now sharing tools and making jokes in a mixture of languages. The universal translator had to work overtime to keep up with all the different ways people expressed friendship. You know what I keep thinking about? Hana asked, watching a young human engineer show a group of recently liberated Vorthan children how to use a plasma welder safely. That day when you first contacted us, I thought you were just another species that would run away once you understood the danger. Jiwon chuckled. To be fair, running away would have been the smart thing to do. We had no business taking on the Devourers with 30 people and 5 ships held together with spare parts. But you didn't run. Couldn't, he said simply. My sister always used to say that there are 2 kinds of people in the universe. Those who see suffering and turn away, and those who see suffering and turn toward it. She was the second kind. Died trying to evacuate civilians when the Devourers hit Harmony Station. Hana had heard this story before, but she never tired of it. In Zephyrian culture, they had a concept called soul echo, the idea that the best parts of people who died continued to live on in the actions of those who remembered them. Jiwon's sister had never met a Zephyrian, but her soul echo had helped save an entire species. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Taeho's voice came through the station's communication system, which now blended human electronics with Zephyrian bioacoustics to create sound that felt like music. Admiral, we're receiving a distress signal from the Outer Rim. Looks like there's a small group of survivors from the Crystalline Empire hiding in an asteroid field. They've been running from corrupted Devourer remnants for 3 months. Jiwon straightened up immediately. Even though the main Devourer fleet had been healed and converted, there were still pockets of corrupted ships scattered across the galaxy. Most were small groups that had been separated from the main fleet during previous battles, but they were still dangerous to anyone they encountered. How long to get there? He asked. 18 hours with the new hybrid drives. I've already got teams prepping the healing ships. Good, tell Captain Kyung to ready his squadron and see if any of the Kelvani want to come along. Their new ships are perfect for asteroid field operations. Hana watched him slip into command mode with practiced ease. The scared cargo captain who had first contacted her was gone, replaced by someone who had found his true calling in saving others. You don't have to personally respond to every distress call, she pointed out gently. We have dozens of ships now, hundreds of trained crews. The Restoration Alliance can handle multiple rescue operations simultaneously. I know, Jiwon said, already heading toward the command center, but I like to be there for the first contact. You remember how it felt when we showed up at your station? That moment when you realized you weren't alone anymore? Hana did remember. The disbelief, the desperate hope, the overwhelming relief of discovering that someone cared enough to risk everything for strangers. I want to be the person who gives that feeling to others, Jiwon continued. Besides, the Crystallines are reportedly master engineers. If we can save them and convince them to join the Alliance, imagine what we could build together. That was so typically human, Hana thought. Always thinking about what they could accomplish together, never about what they could gain for themselves. She followed him to the command center, where crews from multiple species worked at stations, designed by combining the best technology from everyone. Human efficiency, Zephyrian harmony, Kelvani artistry, Melodian energy manipulation. It shouldn't have worked, but somehow it created something better than any of them could have achieved alone. Attention all Alliance vessels, Jiwon announced, over the general communication channel. We have people in trouble who need our help. Who's ready to remind the galaxy that nobody fights alone? The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Kyung's voice came through first, as always eager for action. Ready to launch in 15 minutes, Admiral. The hybrid fighters are performing beautifully. Kelvani art ship, Harmony's dream. Ready. To depart, announced Captain Velith in her melodious voice. Our sculptor warriors are eager to create beauty from chaos once again. Energy singers prepared to weave light paths through the asteroid field, chimed the Melodian collective consciousness. Even some of the former Devourer ships volunteered, their crews desperate to make up for the destruction they had been forced to cause during their corruption. As the fleet prepared to launch, Hana stood beside Jiwon at the command center's main window. The ships looked like nothing that had ever existed before, fusion designs that combined the best elements of every species in the Alliance. They were built not for conquest or profit, but for the radical act of showing up when others needed help. Your people really did change everything, Hana said quietly. Not just by saving us, but by showing us a different way to exist in the galaxy. Jiwon shook his head. We didn't change anything. We just refused to accept that things had to stay the way they were. Sometimes that's all it takes. The first ships began launching, their hybrid drives leaving trails of light that looked like shooting stars. Each one carried crews from multiple species, all united by the simple idea that no one should have to face the darkness alone. The Crystalline Empire has been hiding for 3 months, Hana mused. They probably think they're the last of their kind, that no one cares enough to. Look for them. Then they're about to have the best day of their lives, Jiwon said with a grin. I love that moment when people realize the cavalry has arrived. As the rescue fleet disappeared into hyperspace, Hana looked around the command center at the impossible mixture of species working together. 6 months ago, most of these people had never heard of each other. Now they were family, bound together not by blood or politics or shared history, but by the simple human idea that everyone deserved to be. Saved, the galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly how it should be.